Hey everyone, I'm back to continue what is becoming, I guess, a little mini-series of sorts on socially distanced exercise. Now, I'm kind of bouncing around between things that are more general fitness, if you want to call them that, exercises, or things that are done with a more general fitness kind of goal, and things that might be related to my martial arts training that I've done, be it striking arts, punching, kicking, blocking kind of stuff, stances, or grappling arts. So the judo and jiu-jitsu, for example, that I'm doing, the things that help you to throw people or roll around on the floor and twist yourself into different positions. And this one is going to be one, this video here will explore some stuff that really has carryover to both, and it just comes down to how intensely you're doing it or what your current capabilities are, okay? So wherever you are, that's where I want you to be. And I know that sounds kind of vague, but what I mean is whatever your body can handle right now, that's what you work with. Don't compare yourself to somebody else. Just see what you're capable of doing without causing any pain or any injury or any issues. Even anything above mild discomfort, I would say take it easy, back off, and just pace yourself, right? But if you want to get better and better with this, of course, these are things that you can progress. And specifically, we're going to look at the hip joint. That's why I've got these two bones right here. And just to make sure everybody's on the same page. The hip joint is the joining between the thigh bone, the femur, right here, and the pelvis. This little part of the pelvis is called the acetabulum. This is the socket in which the head of the femur fits. And the important thing to know is just that because of the shape of this head of the femur and the shape of this socket, the way they fit together tends to allow you to move pretty freely. It's not the freest joint in the body, but it's free enough that we can move forward and backwards, what we call flexion and extension of the hip. We can move out and in like so. We can probably go farther out than we can go in. That's abduction or abduction and adduction of the hip. And we can internally and externally rotate, or medially and laterally rotate. So we can spin this femur in and out like so. I can't really show you because of the angle of the camera and the field of view here, but if I pick my leg up, basically I can spin the bone in the socket like so, okay? We're going to focus on a couple of those planes of motion. We're going to focus on 3 of these motions, more specifically for now. But no, you've got millions of options. There's tons of stuff to do. We're just going to start somewhere basic enough that hopefully you can kind of follow along. So, what I want to do is talk about flexibility, but talk about it alongside strength, or what we might think of as strength. Flexibility can sometimes be thought of as just how much range of motion a joint has. How far can I get my leg up, right? How far can I move that bone in the socket? But how far we can do those things relates also to how strong certain muscles are, not just how loose or how relaxed certain muscles are or certain tissues are. So I think that if you want to get flexible, you have to address both of these things. And I'm not going to get into all of the physiology or all the deep anatomy on it just yet, but it's important to recognize that you might have better outcomes if you address things from both sides. Let me explain what I mean. When I was teaching Taekwondo, I would come through the class, I would meet a bunch of new people, and inevitably they wanted to kick really high, right? They wanted to be able to, they saw the black belts who were flying through the air, or even if they were just standing, were throwing these really big high kicks, really fancy stuff, right? Just coming up, and all that was really nice and cool and fancy to them. And so their thinking was, oh, I'm definitely too tight to get my leg up there, so I better start cranking on this thing and, trying to stretch out those muscles like they're taffy or something. And indeed, if you do a variety of different stretches, there are a lot of ways to do it, you may get that thing to relax. You may get muscles to relax and let you go farther into a range. But I always used to tell them, well, how high do you want to kick? And they'd be like, well, I want to kick somebody in the head or whatever. I'd say, okay, lift your leg up and stand there and hold it. Most people can't even do this, right? Putting their foot here. The quad will start to lock up. They may literally not be strong enough to hold it there even for a moment, but they definitely, this becomes very difficult. They start shaking, they get all this stuff, and I go, well, if you can't be stable there and have control there, why do you care so much about getting up here? Earn the range that you have. Get stronger as you go, and learn to hold these positions. Learn to own these positions. So that's something we're going to focus on here. And then I'll show the stretch as well. But I want you to think about it and think about coupling these things together. So let's go ahead and go with that one, right? If I want to kick out to in front of me, swing my leg, maybe I want to be a can-can dancer or something. Or maybe I just have a job that requires me to get upstairs or anything like that. Anything where my thigh has to get up in front of me like this. I might want to work on increasing flexibility. And indeed, a simple way you can do that is just find any kind of an object. How high depends on how flexible you already are, how stable you are, standing on one leg, that kind of thing. And I'll show a version on the floor really quickly as well. But you come up. This counter happens to be really good for me. It's just below or right about my hip joint height, not my pelvis height. My pelvis is above it, but close to my hip joint height. And so I can put my foot right out here, and this is pretty comfortable for me. It may not be for you. You may have to go lower, maybe on a desk or a stool or a chair or something like that. But that's okay. And from this position, I'm not going to just grab and yank myself down. I'm going to try instead to very slowly, using the muscles in front of my hip, pull myself down towards my leg. And I'm going to feel something in the back here. I'm going to feel sort of a stretch in the back of the hamstring. That's fine. And just go as far as I can tolerate. I'm not trying to prove anything, but if I find a reasonable challenge, I'll just hold that and try to engage, keep my abs fairly tight, and keep my hip flexors engaged. So those are the muscles that tend to bring the leg up into this position, or if my leg is static, would tend to bring my pelvis forward. And using those muscles, what I'm doing is, yeah, I'm stretching this stuff back here. But at the same time, I'm also strengthening, to some extent, the stuff in the front that would tend to pick my leg up. So some of the same muscles that are responsible for lifting the leg up, and you can test them if you have your leg out just by trying to lift your leg, not using my hands, lifting your leg off of that surface, right? This is a great exercise. This will be challenging for most people. So just see if you're in this kind of position, if you can even gently lift your leg up. Maybe not from this height, maybe again from a chair or something. So it may be down here where you're on some sort of a platform, you do your stretch, and then see if you can lift your leg up just a bit, okay? Take your time with that. 20 seconds, 30 seconds at a time maybe. Pace it out, maybe do a few sets of that. You have to feel your body and figure out what it can tolerate, what feels comfortable for you. Now, I want to show you something that's a modification, because I know I was standing on one leg. If you're not comfortable doing that, you can do it this way as well. Let me lower this down. This might be it. Yeah, this is good. Okay, so I'm going to get down here on the floor with my wonderful tan. And from here, you can, with either side, right, put a leg out. The other leg generally needs to just be kind of stored somewhere where it's not terribly in the way. And the same basic goal applies here. Using those muscles in front, try to shorten that stuff. I'll call back to that previous exercise video I did where when we're doing crunches, we're thinking about bringing our ribs to our pelvis. Well, this is kind of a similar thought, bringing the whole torso kind of in one piece for now, towards the thigh, towards the front of or the top of your thigh. And you go as far as you can go. Now you have gravity helping to pull you down a little bit. You may want to use your hands. You don't want to be pulled in too far, too quickly. And just find that position. Now, I'm holding my knee up because this knee is injured. And that's an important point I want to make. The reason I showed the standing version was that, yes, it requires more balance, but you have an advantage. Because if you have flexibility issues where maybe this hip doesn't want to let you put this leg here, or the knee is injured or something like that, you will be bothered by this. You might be too distracted by this to really get as effective of an exercise on the leg you're actually trying to stretch or the side you're trying to strengthen, right? So be aware of that. If you can't sit and do it, you might be able to do a standing version. If I switch to the other side, you'll notice I can drop this leg straight down, and it's not a problem because this knee can handle the strain going across the joint, okay? But again, using the muscles in front, pulling myself forward. I'm not gripping and yanking from the ground. I'm not having a partner pull me forward. You do see drills like that, especially in martial arts. We're not worried about that right now. We're just coming forward. Hands can be resting right here. And try to use those muscles in front to pull you deeper into this stretch. Okay? And what's going to happen is you are still going to probably be able to feel a nice effective lengthening of the stuff on the back, the hamstring muscles. You may even feel it in your glutes. Kind of depends on your anatomy and your situation. But we are at the same time building maybe a little bit of, let's call it motor competency, or a little bit of muscular control ability. You can call it whatever you like, but where we're also strengthening, slowly exercising the stuff that would tend to lift the leg up, okay? So that's our sagittal plane, kind of lifting the leg in front, front kick kind of thing. Let's move on to the next one. Now, I'll see if I can do this justice. Okay, I kind of want you to see my whole leg, so that might be good. My messy apartment here. Okay, so let's move you on over. Oh, okay. So now the next one is going to be a frontal plane exercise. So instead of this flexion thing going on, we're going to work this abduction sort of thing. And I'm going to do the strengthening, quote unquote, part a little. I'm going to do that one first and show you what I'm talking about here. So people want to kick out to the side, or maybe they just need to navigate, right? They just need to kind of walk side to side around things. Just being able to lift your leg out to the side so you can step over stuff. Whatever the case may be, that's important. And so this is one way to maybe strengthen some of the stuff on the side of the hip that allows you to do that. Now, this is very simple. For most people, they will find a challenge just doing this. In fact, you might want to hold on to something. You know, if you don't trust your balance, you'll have to shift your weight over a little bit, take your weight off of whichever side you're working out, and there's going to be some balance requirement on the other side. Use the wall if you need, use a chair, whatever helps you. And then you just slowly come out to the side. And I know you can't really see, but I'm trying not to let my hips hike up like this. I pick whatever the height they are at. They might hike a little at first, but now from here, I'm just coming out to the side. I'm not trying to move my pelvis anymore. I'm just trying to move my thigh, move my femur in that socket. And this is about as far as I can go, about right there. I'm a trained kicker. That's as far as my leg wants to go. So how did I kick way up here? Well, if I did a big, a high roundhouse up to the side, well, I had to do stuff at this hip. I had to do stuff with my pelvis in place, and I had to do stuff with this hip. So I had to use several joints to create the end motion of my foot going all the way up here, right? That didn't all come just from this part, this hip joint on my right side. So don't think it's got to go far. This is not a very big movement. Just come out to the side and hold it. You're going to feel it. You'll feel it in probably a couple different glute muscles, and that can be very challenging. Don't force it. If you feel something start to cramp, that is common in some people, and a lot of people, including martial artists. Just back out of it, take your time. Maybe instead of going all the way, right, maybe back off of that and, a few degrees. Come down a couple inches. Now, if you want a little bit more challenge on that, well, if you have a wall, you can get some challenge. So, for example, I'm going to use my other leg here, since I have this wall on this side. I can come out to the side here and just push in. That's it. And you can actually, if you do that, give yourself more challenge at different ranges. So instead of just having it feel the most challenging at the top, right, which would be about this far out for me, something like that, right? Well, now I can challenge myself if I get close enough to the wall, right there. I've barely lifted my leg, but now I'm getting a workout. My hips are feeling this. My hip is feeling this. These muscles are lighting up because I'm pushing into the wall. So you have an isometric in that case, where the muscle is trying to work, but the length isn't changing. So that kind of stuff helps to strengthen bringing the legs out to the side, which again Can be good for doing fancy high kicks and stuff out to the side. That's not the only thing it's good for though. In fact, whenever you're moving side to side, stabilizing your pelvis, well, some of the muscles that are really responsible for that are muscles that I was just using here to press against the wall or to lift the leg out to the side. So, in fact, there is research out there. I was doing some of this research for a while that links your ability to push out or your ability to hold a leg out, basically the strength or the activity of those muscles, to a person's ability to stay stable, to control their gait, and it's related to fall risk in older people or in people who've had injuries or stroke, that kind of thing. So controlling that can be good just for quality of life, in addition to, giving you the ability to throw nice high kicks and stuff, okay? So that's the strengthening part of it. The stretchy kind of part, to get the leg out there, of course, that's the split or the straddle kind of situation. Now, I can't go really heavy with this, and I would recommend that people take their time here. But as you come down, if you're strong enough and you're not too worried about your balance and whatever, you can just go straight into it on the floor, as I'm doing here. Make sure that you have a non-slippery floor, please. You probably want some friction on the ground. And you slowly just come down until you start feeling it in the adductor or groin muscles on either side. Now, you can do this on just one side at a time. So I can bring this leg in, for example, and just focus on this side. I can switch it to the other side. Be aware that this puts some stress on your knees. If you're worried about that stress, you can instead do it with your butt on the floor. Also, how low you go, it's going to depend on your anatomy. You may never get as far as somebody else, and it's not because you're not trying hard enough or because your muscles are stupid or not doing their job, but it could just be because your joints are designed differently, okay? But I want to show you, all the way on the ground, we have this. So if I want to do this, and I don't want to try to hold myself up like that, I just sit down. I know I fell down kind of quickly, right? Just get to a floor, assuming you can. You can even do this on your bed. And you just spread the legs apart, and you find a width that feels challenging but not dangerous for you. You have to make this decision. Come out to the sides. If you are, if everything's intact and you don't have to worry too much about damaging things, then you can use your arms to kind of push them a little farther apart. You find again where that challenging point is for you. Some people like to fall forward into it. You can feel a little bit of a different sensation if you move your body forward. I would say do it slowly. Explore these positions. You can move to one side and drop down, move to the other side, drop down. Maybe hold this position for 15 seconds. I'm just throwing out a number to start with. You explore from there. And then to this side maybe for 10 or 15 seconds. And the same thing over here. And then you can come forward and do the same thing. If you do 15 seconds in each position, well, that's about a minute. That's a 1 minute set. So you could do 3 rotations of that, 4 rotations of that, and you've just done a few minutes of stretching, what would be considered a groin stretch. And actually, you also get a hamstring stretch out of this if you are interested in that, just by keeping the knees reasonably straight, or if your anatomy is such, or if your body's such where you just maybe aren't that flexible, maybe you feel like you already have to bend your knees a little, it may feel like a stretch just here. That's okay. Don't force anything. So that's getting the insides of the legs, kind of the stretching, the stuff that would be lengthened when we did those side kicks out to the side or those roundhouse kick kind of things. And that's about all I'm going to do for that frontal plane thing. The last bit I'm going to show you is hip extension. Now this one is a little bit interesting because people have misconceptions about the motion. Let's come back up here. Just right on up here with me. Okay. So hip extension. So that is moving the leg back. Let me pull my shorts up a little bit so you can see a little more leg. Woo! Right? Moving the leg back like so. So that's this femur coming back in the socket. Whoop. So now that would actually be going this way since it's a left femur. going back in the socket. So let's actually do it like that. Right? Left leg. There we are. It's the most synchronized thing I'm going to do all day. So, simple enough. You can just challenge yourself. I would suggest grabbing onto something. Why? Well, we have a habit of doing this. If somebody says stick your leg far back there, people will do this and lean. Especially if they're standing on one foot. As that leg goes back, they kind of feel like they have to. And they turn their body into this sort of almost T-pose kind of thing. And that's not what we're trying to do. We are trying to improve our ability to extend the hip. So extending the hip means moving the femur relative to the pelvis. Moving your leg relative to this big hip bone here. So I'm going to use this to try to keep myself stable so I don't have to lean forward. I hold on here and I just push my leg back. And that might be about as far as I get. You can see just at the bottom of the frame, I get a few degrees of extension, and that's about it. Most people don't get a lot of motion here. It's not that they can't shoot their leg farther back, but they have to move other stuff. Just as when we're moving out to the side, you have to move other stuff to get the leg all the way up there, right? Well, because if you only move the joint by itself, you only have, say, that much motion or whatever. Same thing here, just pushing back. And if you want to stretch the stuff in front, that's normally not a thing that, for purposes of kicks, people care about, but you may, for one reason or another, feel a need or desire to do that. There are several ways you can. You can, of course, just do your classic kind of quad and hip flexor stretch thing. I'm not a huge fan of doing a lot of this for reasons I won't get into right now, but this is one of those where people may feel a little something, a little lengthening in the front. But really, I suggest just continuing to go back. And you may find it's a little easier if you bend your knee, maybe not fully 90, but you bend your knee a little bit and then move back from there. If you want to continue giving yourself a challenge, you can even go against the wall. You may need something to stabilize against again. So I bend my knee and I'm kind of pushing my heel back into the wall here, or into a door or whatever obstacle I have. So I just push back here. And it feels a little bit weird, but you don't need a whole lot of resistance to make this effective, especially if you're working on doing a thing standing. Now, if you want to do it on the ground, you can. Go back to the previous video that I did where I did these sort of glute bridge things. That's what this probably looks like. If you looked at that one, this should be familiar. I did a one-legged glute bridge, right? Did two-legged, I think, as well. So you have a similar situation. That might be easier if you don't want to try doing things on one leg, standing up, but instead just doing it on the ground. That's fine. Again, you can do these things on your bed. It's a little bit wobbly, but if you are worried about your balance, that's totally fine. You can do it on the couch, do it on anything cushiony, do it on carpet instead of a hardwood floor, or instead of on tile or whatever. You decide, as long as you can be stable, okay? Last little thing I'm going to throw in, actually, I wasn't thinking about, was let's say I want to work on that hip flexion kind of thing, but if I Charlie horse my leg the whole time I'm trying this, every time I try to do this, I get a cramp in my quad. Well, okay, let's try this. If you have a table that's very heavy and stable, or a counter like this, or heck, just a bike rack outside or anything, something you can push underneath, you can push up into. You can take your thigh, put it right underneath, maybe use your hands, and just push up into it. And now I have my hip flexors. If you care, the iliopsoas group, people would say, the iliacus and psoas major. But these muscles are pulling my femur up, pulling my thigh up, trying to get it towards my pelvis and my spine. And so this allows me to work on trying to strengthen that stuff, but I'm not as worried about having that cramp in my quad that happens when I keep my legs straight. So I wanted to add that one in at the end. I know this was a little bit long, but I wanted to give you several different options. I may also do an abridged version that has fewer explanations that I can upload right next to this. Gotta think that over, but there you go. A few flexibility or mobility options for you. So hopefully that's interesting. I'm going to continue with some more strengthening stuff, maybe some more martial arts drills, I'm just going to continue the rotation, adding stuff in, stuff that you can try while you are stuck losing your mind like I am at home. So hope that was helpful, interesting, something, and I will catch you all later. Take care.